Welcome to Ugandan Tales Africa, where we bring stories and legends to life. In this story, we will walk you through the journey of Siroganga, the king, and the secret that changed everything. Listen closely because this tale carries a lesson that people still remember even today.
In a quiet African village, as the sun began to set and cast a warm golden light over the round thatched huts and the soft green hills beyond, an elderly man sat alone near a small fire, his face marked by the wrinkles of time and regret. And he began to speak with a voice trembling slightly, confessing to the young villagers gathered around him that in his youth he had spent many years wandering from place to place, drinking alcohol and wasting his life, only to realize now that all he had gained from it was shame, emptiness, and lost time. And as he spoke, his hands trembled and his eyes glistened with the reflection of the fire, showing the depth of his sorrow and the weight of his confession. He recalled himself as a young man, strong and full of energy, moving from one small rural hut that served as a drinking place to another, laughing loudly with friends, drinking from clay pots and gourds filled with banana beer and palm wine, always seeking more, always chasing the next laugh or the next party. While around him life continued, crops grew, children played, families worked, and yet he wasted every hour, never staying home to build his own future, never thinking about the path he was walking, lost in the false pleasures of alcohol and the illusion of friendship and joy. And though he believed he was living, he was only a visitor in his own life, drifting without direction or purpose. He remembered the moments when the laughter of friends faded, and he began to notice the whispers and sideways glances of the villagers, the elders shaking their heads as they watched him stumble along the paths, the younger children pointing and giggling at his clumsiness. And in those moments, a sharp ache pierced his heart as he realized that alcohol had given him nothing but insult and shame, that the life he thought he was living had been empty and fleeting, and that all the knowledge of different drinks and drunken adventures had not brought him honor or respect, only loneliness, mockery, and a growing sense of regret that now weighed heavily on his soul. Long ago, in a vast and beautiful kingdom, surrounded by green hills and a calm, sparkling lake, there lived a king whose eyes had begun to fail him. Blurring and burning with pain, and fearing the loss of his sight, he sought out the wisdom of a renowned traditional healer, a witch doctor known for his ancient knowledge and mystical remedies, who listened carefully to the king's complaint, studied the stars, smelled the herbs, and finally told the king that he must journey to a sacred dark forest at a precise time to perform a special ritual that could restore his eyes, but warned him that during this journey and ritual no one must see him, for the ritual was delicate, sacred, and could only succeed in complete secrecy. The witch doctor, an old man with long grey dreadlocks, a flowing white beard, ragged traditional clothes, and a necklace of bones and charms, gave the king further instructions, speaking slowly and with great authority, telling him to leave the palace quietly, to travel through the kingdom without drawing attention, and to reach the edge of the forest before the first light of a specific day, warning him that any violation of the secrecy would risk the failure of the ritual and bring great misfortune. And the king listened intently, bowing deeply before the healer, carrying with him both the hope of healing and the heavy weight of obedience to the ancient rules of the forest and the spirits that watched over it. Following the instructions, the king journeyed through the forest, which was alive with the sounds of nature. The rustle of leaves, the calls of birds, the distant trumpet of elephants, and the subtle movements of unseen predators, and he performed the ritual in a clearing surrounded by thick ancient trees, the sunlight barely penetrating the dense canopy above. As he whispered prayers and carefully followed the witch doctor's guidance, feeling the sacred energy of the place around him while remaining vigilant that no eyes, human or animal, might witness this delicate act, knowing that his very health and future rested on his complete obedience and discretion. While the king concentrated on the ritual, a young hunter named Siroganga entered the forest, chasing after a herd of wild animals, moving with confident steps and a sharp eye for movement, his torn animal skin clothes brushing against the thick undergrowth, and he stumbled upon the king entirely by accident, his presence startling both men. The king, knowing the sacred rules, pleaded with Siroganga, begging him to keep this encounter a secret, warning him that any disclosure would carry severe consequences. And though Siroganga promised quietly to honor this secret, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath, foreshadowing the trials that would follow once human weakness met the intoxicating power of alcohol. After completing the ritual successfully, the king returned to the palace, where a grand feast was prepared in his honor, with villagers, guards, and elders gathered around, drums beating rhythmically, fires lighting the night sky, large clay pots simmering with roasted meat, and banana beer and palm wine flowing freely, creating an atmosphere of celebration and joy. Siroganga, attending the feast among many others, felt the warmth and excitement of the crowd, unaware that the very drinks he would soon consume carried the power to betray his promise and set in motion events that could destroy him, as laughter, music, and movement filled every corner of the palace grounds. As the night progressed and Siroganga drank freely, the strong alcohol loosened his tongue and clouded his judgment, making him feel bold, triumphant, and proud. And in his excitement and carelessness, he began speaking loudly about his earlier encounter in the forest, narrating the secret he had been warned never to tell, forgetting entirely the sacredness of the king's instructions, the solemnity of the forest, and the consequences that awaited those who broke such promises, his voice echoing across the feast as the guests paused, noticing the reckless boldness of the hunter who had unknowingly sealed his own fate. The crowd listened in shock as Siroganga recounted every detail of his forest encounter, the king's vulnerability, and the sacred ritual, and the whispers quickly grew into murmurs of disbelief and concern, spreading through the palace like wildfire. Until finally, the king himself heard of the revelation. His calm demeanor turned to a mixture of anger and sorrow, for he realized that the sacred secret entrusted to Siroganga had been carelessly destroyed by the very thing that clouded his mind. The intoxicating power of alcohol and the weight of justice and tradition demanded a response that would forever mark this event in the kingdom's history. Summoning his elders and guards, the king sat solemnly upon his throne, his voice steady but heavy with disappointment, declaring that Siroganga had violated sacred trust, that he had endangered the sanctity of the kingdom and the rituals that protected it, and that punishment must follow. The royal guard stood ready, the villagers held their breath, and Siroganga, realizing too late the severity of his actions, lowered his head, understanding that his life had been irrevocably changed by a single moment of recklessness and the invisible influence of the alcohol he had consumed. Siroganga was executed, a tragic yet cautionary tale for all who witnessed it. As the kingdom mourned the loss of a young hunter whose bravery and skill were undone by his lack of restraint, and the story of his fall became a warning passed from one generation to the next, that strength, courage, and loyalty can all be destroyed by carelessness, and that alcohol, though it may bring laughter and courage in small doses, holds the power to make even the strongest and most capable person speak what should never be spoken. The old man paused by the fire, looking at the young faces illuminated in the flickering light, and he told them that he too had once walked a similar path, chasing pleasure and drinking freely, drifting through life without thought for the future, and he admitted with deep humility that he had been lucky to survive his own recklessness, that he had witnessed the dangers of alcohol and human weakness firsthand, and that he now understood the importance of wisdom, restraint, and the careful choices that shape a life. Finally, the old man stood, gazing over the peaceful village and the rolling hills beyond, and with a firm but gentle voice, he declared that he had closed the depots, that he had left behind the life of drunken wandering, and that from that day forward he would live with purpose, honor, and discipline, leaving the young villagers with a clear lesson, that one's choices determine the legacy of a life, that carelessness can bring ruin, and that courage, wisdom, and self-control are the true treasures one must pursue, ending the tale with hope, reflection, and a vision of a better life yet to come.
And that is the story of Siroganga. That reminds us the word once spoken cannot be taken back. From that day, people remembered the lesson: the secrets must be guarded, and that sometimes the power of alcohol can lead to a person to speak what should remain silent. If you have enjoyed the story with us, for more stories and more legends from Ugandan Tales Africa.